Hello and welcome to Shadowbird's Skyfall recap vlog. The name's Bird, Shadowbird. Alright, this is going to be the version where I attempt to go without spoilers, thus the name anti-spoiler version. If you want to see the spoiler version, you may click on the link down here, but if you watch both the anti-spoiler and the spoiler version, they may mutually annihilate in a massive explosion. So, here we go. I am going to attempt to say this without any spoilers. Um, I think I will start by saying that this movie was really great. It was a great all-around movie. It wasn't just, just a great Bond movie or a great action movie. It was great all around. There were emotional elements to it, you know, as well. Uh, it focused a lot on the relationship between Bond and M, and they were kind of really co-equal protagonists, really, in this movie. So, and the interplay between Daniel Craig and Judi Dench, absolutely fabulous. Judi Dench, my favorite M. She will forever be my M. You know, much in the same way that some people would call, Peter Davidson or David Tennant or Tom Baker their doctor. Judi Dench is my M. And I've seen most of the Bond movies, even going back as far as Doctor No. Um, I skipped a few here and there. I didn't see Quantum of Solace. Um, what else can I talk about that's not spoilery? The Skyfall theme. Uh, the Skyfall theme, done and written by Adele, could not have been a better fit. Her voice just fits Bond theme songs. The lyrics of the song fit the moment that the intro's about, and the song itself had kind of this retro styling to it, kind of like the Bond themes of the 60s and the 70s, the good ones. Not to say that all of the more recent ones were bad, but, well, the one to Quantum of Solace, which I have actually heard without seeing the movie, wasn't that great. Poor man's version of the theme to Casino Royale, really. Uh, what else can I talk about? Um, that's not spoilery. There is a new Q. Yeah, that's not really spoilery because if you've seen the commercials and you've seen the trailers, you've probably seen the fact that there's a new Q. And it's about due time because after the little detox period from the bad writing that John Cleese had to endure, having a new Q uh, in this era really helps. Um, if you instead of spoiling the movie, maybe for those who haven't seen it yet, I should kind of give you an idea of what to expect rather than what's actually in the movie. Um, if you expect just a pure action movie, well, you will get plenty of action, some there might be some moments in there that might bore you if all you want is pure action because, well, movie pacing, you know. And it is a pretty long movie too. So again, if you're just in for a pure action popcorn flick, probably not what you want to go to. Now, if you're in any way familiar with the Bond mythos, this is the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and this movie does play into that. It has the best elements of the more modern eras, and specifically this current one, the Daniel Craig era, along with the best elements of the past, and little references back and forth. Uh, it really is kind of, in some ways, some of the lines of the movie, which I'm not going to quote directly for the sake of spoiling, kind of really reflect maybe how people might actually be perceiving the Bond series. So the way this movie was written was really cognizant of how the Bond series is being viewed in this day and age, and kind of reasserting the fact that you know James Bond will always be James Bond no matter what form he takes or what era he lives in. And that's a really, really important statement to make, because when you have a franchise that's been going on for 50 years, you know, you it's hard to just stop. You have you either you either uh, stop it fairly quickly into its life, or you just you let it go, you let it grow, and you let it evolve. And with the case of the James Bond series, they've let it grow and they've let it evolve for half a century now. And, you know, that's a good thing. It in movie in the movie world, it basically is the movie version of a comic book, really. Because, because in the comic book industry, you have characters that have been around for 70, 80 years now. And they never stop changing, they never stop evolving. And then, of course, you've got Doctor Who, which is just about as old as James Bond, a little bit younger, that's been going on for almost as long. And it too has grown and evolved and changed over time. And like I said, when something runs for a significant enough time, that's pretty much what you have to do to survive. It's because, especially with something so entrenched in pop culture as James Bond, you know, let's look at the other major franchises besides, Doctor Who and DC and Marvel that have gone on for a long, long, long time, that are entrenched in our pop culture. Star Trek and Star Wars. Let's look at them, because they've been Star Trek has been going on for almost the same amount of time, and Star Wars a little bit younger, but Star Wars in some ways is kind of an example of how to do a long-running franchise wrong. Don't get me wrong, there have been some plenty good things along the way in the changing and evolving universe that have been around, like in the expanded universe books, the Clone Wars micro series where they go back in time, the Knights of the Old Republic video games were pretty good, and there are bits and pieces here that are really, really good, but a lot of how it's changed has been really kind of crappy, because for one thing, it's been retreading the same things over and over and over again in the case of the nigh infinite re-releases of the various iterations of the original trilogy. But it also eats away at itself in some cases, like the new CGI Clone Wars series that goes against both the Clone Wars micro series and, yes, I'm going to continue to say this, even eats into the continuity established in episode 3. That's how you do a long-running franchise and extending a long-running franchise wrong. You When you have something that goes as long as even Star Wars, you have to be mindful of what exists. You can't just change things on a whim, because then people get mad at you. And people then celebrate things like your property being sold to Disney. Sorry, a little rant there, but it had to be said. Star Trek, it's had its problems too on that front, but you know, for the most for the most part, for the most part, the things that have come out don't really mess with its own continuity. It's still fairly consistent in universe. It may not always be good, but it's still fairly consistent. Well, at least until the reboot. But we're not talking about the reboot here because I mean, with the Star Trek reboot, that's whole new universe. They're basically starting over from scratch there. I'm talking about the stuff that existed from original series to, well, right up to the reboot, really. Okay, it may be a bad example since there was a reboot there, but you, and maybe the comic book analogy is kind of, well, actually, no, it's not really a bad example because there was a reboot with Star Wars. I mean, there was a reboot with James Bond too. The Daniel Craig era basically is the reboot of Bond. But here's the thing: the reboot with Star Trek changes the entire, basically creates its own different continuity. The Daniel Craig era of Bond not only realizes that the past was there, but it actually refers to it and keeps it canonized. Because, like I said, there are all those references to, you know, things that happened in the 60s, things that happened into the 90s, things that happened to versions of James Bond other than Daniel Craig. And I think the prevailing theory on that is that James Bond is actually a code name for various operatives. And if you think about it in that way, it makes perfect sense. But yeah, Skyfall Skyfall definitely serves its purpose well, not only as a celebration of James Bond's anniversary, but as a continuation of the series proper. And this is the only thing quasi-spoilery that I will say in this particular one. At the very end credits, it does say James Bond will return. So, folks, this movie's not the end. James Bond's here, and it will continue to be here as long as there are people who love it. And as long as there are people who pay money to watch Bond movies. But that's neither here nor there. Because if people didn't love it, we wouldn't be shelling out money to watch the movie, now would we? Oh wait, I forget. We're a nation of people who buys crappy books just so we can burn them. But books and movies not really quite the same thing either. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say that's not spoilery. So if you want to watch a version that's got more spoilers, it's going to be longer and it's going to be not super in depth, but it's going to be a bit more in depth and talk about things that actually happen in the movie, then I'll provide a little annotation link down there for you. So, thank you for joining me on this recap. I'll see you some other time.